My wife Tammy has an assignment in our home ward, and that is to put the word bulletin out. And we have this habit of putting magnificent old messages in. It just happens that that one that was on there that Ezra Taft Benson gave in this particular one was last week's bulletin. And so this is very much on the forefront of our mind. Perhaps this is a totally LDS audience, I don't know. And this will have a decidedly LDS perspective. But for those that may not be LDS, I think it probably will be an interesting study. I think you'll find that if you listen to this, you'll wonder why some of your LDS friends are not much more inclined to promote, support, sustain, uphold, however you want to put it, the United States Constitution and the tradition of the Founding Fathers. Because the message of the LDS prophets has been unequivocal and unassailable as long as this dispensation has been open. And so we're going to use those words an awful lot tonight. You really don't care what I think, I don't think. Maybe some of you do. Tammy might. But, others may not. So we're going to use, not my opinion, we're going to use the words of those that have spoken to us, that those of the LDS faith sustained as prophets, seers, and revelators. Quite a number of years ago, I like to go back to original sources. I like to, anything I put, like for example in my book, we have tied back to an original, unassailable source. So if somebody says, well, I heard Thomas Jefferson said this, well, I don't want to just hear he said it. I want to go to an original document that actually proves he said that. There's plenty of great urban legends out there about politics. And some of them are even true. But there's a lot that aren't. And I mentioned Thomas Jefferson because many of the things that are attributed to him are not true. Well, they may be true, but he didn't say them. So at any rate, I like to go back to original sources. So quite a number of years, probably 18 or 20 years ago, I wanted to see if there was any kind of footing anybody could have in the LDS Church that would say that socialism was acceptable to the Lord. And I did a pretty comprehensive study. I started with Joseph Smith, and he spoke against socialism, and John Taylor was in the meeting, and John Taylor's writings and speakings later on, confirmed that. And of course, all through the whole last dispensation, it's been that way. So I put together a little document. I don't remember the exact, it's only 150 pages long. I figured people wouldn't read much more than that, but I put together 150 pages of statements by those of the Latter-day Prophets in regards to, I titled it something like Communism, Socialism, Welfare Statism, and Other Forms of Satan's Government. So it was something like that. It was a little inflammatory to some people probably. But it is absolutely bulletproof in terms of the message. And it's interesting to me that a lot of LDS people do not want to embrace it. In fact, they're absolutely opposed to it. And it's very offensive to them. And I could tell you lots of stories and examples that we could use, but we don't have time tonight. But the fact of the matter is, probably some of you have experienced that. And I think that one time, as I think back, about a year ago, I was up in the Pacific Northwest speaking about not LDS things, but preserving the Constitution, to preserve the nation, those kind of things. That seems to be a fixation of mine. And I was asked to come have an interview with a Christian radio station in Washington. And to these Christians, the Mormons are kind of not just weird, they're a cult. and they had me on, and of course I was passionately enthusiastic about this idea of preserving the nation by restoring the principles it was founded on, and being able to stand fast in the liberty that we were created in. I mean, that is a godly heritage kind of thing. Anyway, we get towards the end of the interview, and there were two talk radio hosts that were there that were they weren't grilling me. I mean, they were having a lot of fun with it because they were Christians and they loved this idea of liberty. And they said, at the end of the interview, they said, "You're from Utah, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I am from Utah." And they said, "Well, are you a Mormon? I said, yes, I am. And they said, do all Mormons believe like you? I said, only the ones that understand the principles the gospel is established on. And I'm trying really hard to help expand that understanding. It was like, whoa, boy, if all you Mormons are like this, that's amazing. I said, they're not all yet. We're trying to make them that way. So anyway, you heard that statement about, and Ezra Taft Benson quoted that statement. It was quoted often about what Joseph Smith said about, the Constitution hanging by a thread and the elders being the ones the nation will lean on, all this kind of stuff. You're going to see some of these statements in here. You'll see some of the scriptures that were mentioned in there. We're going to review these things because, again, this isn't my opinion. All I'm doing is putting together the words of those that are LDS, sustained as prophets, seers, and revelators. But you're going to see a statement in there that probably most of you have never seen. And it's a statement that was given by John Taylor. I'll preface it, you'll read it here in a while, and then we can, you'll just kind of know to think about it. But John Taylor, in October General Conference in 1879, when Brigham Young was dead, John Taylor was the new prophet. And he's speaking in conference. He talks about what the nation at that time was doing to the Constitution. Now, I don't think the nation was, I don't know, there was the radical Republicans in power then, and the Edmunds-Tucker Act stuff was going, and we're trying to crush the gospel of Jesus Christ from the earth, and so on and so forth. But the nation was assaulting the Constitution at that time. And so John Taylor makes mention of that in his conference talk. And he said, we knew this was going to happen. Joseph Smith told us that. Some of these guys here on the stand, they heard him say it. He says, but I'll tell you something. He said, the elders of Israel, and this is a paraphrase, you'll see the exact one in a minute. Well, not in a minute, probably an hour and a half. But he said, the elders of Israel will be the last ones to step forward to save that sacred document, the United States Constitution. And the first time I came across that, no! It's kind of like, say it ain't so. But decades of experience in my life indicate that he was speaking prophetically. And the time will come when there will be those that awaken the saints. And as we'll see in the statement here by Ezra Taft Benson in a little while, he talked about the fact that God raised up those in the founding era of this period in this dispensation in order to be able to establish the Constitution. In fact, we're going to find that the Constitution was the great prelude, the absolute necessary prelude to the restoration of the gospel. And you'll have a couple of statements by those that we sustain as prophets that said the gospel could not have been restored had the Constitution not been there. Okay? So we'll see a couple of those. But, man, it's sure frustrating. But Ezra Taft Benson said that in our day, God will raise up those again, like the founding fathers, to help preserve this nation. Now, when I go out and I speak, I often say to people, are there any here? Maybe. It makes me excited. It makes me thrilled to think that we're building an understanding, a cadre of people. Because when the Savior returns, I believe the time will come that He will modify the Constitution. And this is another tangent we could take and that we could spend probably another hour and a half on. But it's my firm conviction that the Constitution Convention option that's in Article 5 of the United States Constitution is there for the Savior to use when He returns to modify the Constitution so He can rule as Lord of Lords and King of Kings over the whole world. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain what that is? I'm not aware of that.
Oh, Article 5 of the Constitution?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll take a little tangent here, but you know what? You're going to find out it's really dangerous to do this with me because I like shiny objects. And I say, shiny object. And I get off on a tangent really easy, so I'll try not to get too tangential here. But here's the United States. Well, let's back up just a minute.
Just in reference to how the Savior will use that.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. I'll explain first what Article 5 does, and then I'll say why I believe that, about why the Savior would use it. Okay. Declaration of Independence. You've probably heard it before. All men